start again. It's a rich thing.
Heads up for all Unehiya stakeholders. Unehiya just launched a brand new content series to which you now have exclusive access. Some of you know this since you've already watched episode 1 of the Copper Mining series, where we're mining for all the copper nuggets that prove who the copper-colored Aborigines are. More specifically, this series deals directly with the documentation in the memorandum that Unehiya is taking to Congress. To catch the first episode of this new series, click the link in the description box and become a stakeholder. And here's a sneak peek from the first episode, which is all about the study Unehiya just conducted using a computer simulation of the African birth rate during the slave trade. Check it out.
Unehiya presents PopSim, the Unehiya population simulator. The results might shock you.
Try to count how many dots come to North America.
It is known that some Native American women bought male slaves, then freed them, married them, and then their children were born free according to the laws in the 18th century.
The legal memo.
This spring, the search for the copper-colored Aborigines of the Americas goes to the next level. Negroes resisted the slave trade by going to court, and in court, they were identified as Indians.
2 weeks ago, Shaman Aniyunwiyah dropped a bombshell presentation showing several examples of Negroes being called Indians in freedom suits and cases defending Indians' rights. A week later, Kurimeo Ahau also released content focused on freedom suits. It's not a coincidence. The ancestors are guiding your attention to this documentation because the wind of awakening is sweeping through our community to rebuild the embers of the sacred fire.
Join Unehiya and become a Red Stick stakeholder to see all new episodes of the Copper Mining series.
You're also like, all the Indians are black, right? That part. But some of us say like, basically it's because of prehistoric Africans coming to America. And when we talk about Ta-Meri, some people use Ta-Meri to support an out of Africa theory. But some of these researchers out here, a lot of them seem to agree on some kind of Asian connection. And I think we need to explore that more because I'm starting to think Asians came from Indians. Where do y'all think Egypt fit in this?
Pyramid on the Nile in Northeast Africa doesn't have stair steps going up it. It doesn't have temples on top of its summits. They could not go and break through the boat on the temples atop those great pyramids. There are none there. And that was the clue that Egypt was writing about the Americas. And the deeper I got into the records, the clearer it got. They started actually saying, and because Amun loved that land so much, he said it's his beloved land, and that word was Meri, the beloved. Meri, M-E-R-I, Meri. And the land, of course, as before, is Ta. So you have the land, the beloved land, Ta-Meri. And they kept that name and just put the Ta on the end of it. So Ta-Meri became America. We simply say America. We kept the name that Egypt gave to the Americas. So that was the big mystery behind that $10 million map that Martin Waldseemüller made and then put the name America on it in 1507. And then those who knew and those who were trying to hide things said, wait a minute, you can't put that name on here. And the next time he reprinted that map, it was off. It was gone. Because that's the name that Egypt had given the land, Ta-Meri.
If world history happened the way they said it did, then Egypt should have been well known long before 1800. But it wasn't. The most glaring omission from the history of ancient Egypt being the location of Egypt in the Bible is the absolute zero evidence of the Exodus or even Hebrew habitation, which would literally be impossible if this place was the place they say it is. How is there zero evidence for the Exodus? Now, a person could simply just say that the Exodus never existed and the whole story is made up. But then you would have the problem of everything associated with that biblical account being void, basically meaning that the subsequent histories and locations of all associated elements are now non-existent. Basically meaning you should be open to the idea of some sort of fabrication. This assertion alone is enough to literally destroy any evidence of anything biblically connected in the entire region. And I'm not just talking about Egypt. The area they proposed was the land of Goshen, the place where the Israelites began their journey, is literally less than 200 miles from Jerusalem present day, and less than 150 miles from the border of Israel. But there is no evidence for the Exodus or even a significant population of ancient Hebrews in either location. That would seem impossible considering their close proximity to each other. We can find pudding-faced niggas in Indiana, but no Hebrews in Egypt? There's obviously some fuckery amiss. The Exodus was a monumental event. Most estimates state that the number of people participating in the Exodus was over 2 million, including over 600,000 fighting men, according to Exodus 12:37. So how is there no evidence for 2 million Hebrews from a place whose largest city was barely 50,000 people? Not only that, but there's no evidence of any Israelite habitation less than 150 miles from Israel? Somebody please make that make sense, because it doesn't. We know that through the narrative of trade connections in the ancient world, the Egyptians traded with the Mesopotamians thousands of miles away, but there's still no evidence of any relationship between two closer places in Israel and Egypt anywhere in the archaeological record. How, Sway?
Or do you want to marginalize me till I'm out of my moment?
Or why don't you empower yourself and don't need them and do it yourself?
How, Sway?
Take a few steps back to go.
You ain't got the answers, man. You ain't got the answers.
Here, according to Aulus Gellius Diodorus, Egypt was named Area. The Egyptian Aur, later Aer. But look at this, Area. Just add an M between the A and the E. What do you get? Ameria, right? Ameria, Area. All right. The Egyptian Ar, later Aer, in the name of the river Hebrew Er. Area is the land of the river, possibly with the further meaning of the pure, as Ia means to wash, white, and purify. Another name of Egypt is Ta-Meri. Again, another name of Egypt is Ta-Meri. Again, Tamerican, Tamerik, the Tameriqua, Tameri, Tamericans. Ta is to drop, heap, deposit, type. Meri is the inundation. Ta-Meri is land thus deposited. The vulgar English to ta is a child's word, and it means to deposit soil. Also, Ta-Meri reads the gift of inundation, the gift of the goddess Meri, the goddess Mary, or Mary, who had dual form as Meri Res, south, and Mehi, north. Egypt is also designated the land of the eye. All right, so that's interesting. So Meri Res, south, what are we talking about? South America, and Mehi, Mexico, Mehi, North America. All right, now we're going to read from the Zondervan Encyclopedia of the Bible, Volume 2. All right, a lot of you know about this Bible. And it says here, names of Egypt. The ancient Egyptians had several terms for their homeland. Kemet, the black land, as opposed to the desert, the red land. Tawi, the two lands, Upper and Lower Egypt. And Ta-Meri, again, and Ta-Meri, Tamerica, Ta-Meri, a term of uncertain meaning. They don't know what it means. They're telling you that. But you know what? We all know what it means. It means Tamerica, the beloved land of the priest kings, the Khans. The English name Egypt derives from Greek Aegyptos, which in turn derives from Egyptian, and it says here, Pata, mention of the Ka spirit of the god Pita, or house of Pita, a name for Memphis, the ancient capital. All right. This term, already attested in the Armana letters of the 14th century BC as Hikupta, shows the use of a city named for the land. Conversely, the Arabic name of the land, Mazar or Mizr, also stands for Cairo, successor to Memphis. All right. So they're telling you that they had many names, but one of them was Ta-Meri. Again, Ta-Meri, which they don't know what it means. That's why they don't teach us about this. But they know, those in the elite circles, right, what Ta-Meri is and where it was.
Y'all see how Curry Mayo linking that to America? Brilliant researcher. I didn't know how he finds these sources. He just adds a ka sound after Ta-Meri. But this other channel said Amun was talking about America as a beloved land. Amun's a Kemetic creator god. So he's the origin of everything for Egypt. Of course, my guide doesn't give us sources. But this would mean when Egypt was new, they remembered some other land from their history, like it's ancestral to them. And what I think UB is saying, basically, he's saying mainstream history tries to swap prehistoric America with prehistoric Asia, which means they gotta move Egypt. I love how UB does such a good job of making you feel like anybody who thinks modern Egypt is the real Egypt is just an idiot. He makes a good point about the lack of evidence of Israelites in Egypt, kinda. So my only question is, what do they gain by flipping a map? Feel me? And while you put your answer in the comments below, let me show you this.
I have another question. The Olmecs, you were talking about the genetics of these people that live in Native Americans, that they vary widely. But the Olmecs seem to have very similar features, the thick lips, the wide noses. Why do we think that is?
Well, this is part of a curious mystery that is not unconnected to the genetic mystery. It's been known by archaeologists for quite a long time that there are anomalous skulls in parts of Brazil, which appear to show very strongly Polynesian or African features, very much like the features that we see on the Olmec heads. And a number of archaeologists who got into trouble with their colleagues for this have used that to argue many years ago, 30, 40 years ago, that the settlement story of the Americas is much more complicated than we've realized. And what the DNA is doing is it's telling us that there was something really weird happened with settlement. You see, what happened with those African or Polynesian-looking skulls was that they were tested for DNA when DNA technology was not as advanced as it is today. And what that DNA showed was that they were more closely related to modern Native Americans than they are to any other people in the world. So the notion that there was some connection with Polynesia or Africa was dismissed. But now that we have very firm evidence of an Australasian genetic signal, Australian Aborigines, Papua New Guinea, Melanesians, with those kind of features, now that we have the genetic evidence that is found in the Amazon, we have to go back to that old evidence and reconsider it.
Wow. Yeah, I would love to find out what that is. They've always fascinated me. The Olmecs, it's always been such a strange image, the large heads with the helmets on them, and how do they universally look like that? I mean, all
of the features are very, very similar.
Wow.
They're very, very, very similar.
And always with the helmets.
And almost always, I won't claim that every single Olmec head has a helmet of it, because I think I've seen one that didn't. It's quite a while ago since I explored the Olmec area. But what's fascinating about them is they are supposedly the first high civilization of Central America, that they create structures on a massive scale, that you can see connections between them and the later Maya. That whole mystery of the Mayan calendar was clearly inherited from the Olmecs. It wasn't something the Maya made up. The Olmecs used that same symbolism. So the Mayan calendar is actually an Olmec calendar. And if we then consider the possibility that the Olmecs may just be the latest, the earliest surviving manifestation of that calendar, it could go back much further than that.
This guy, Graham Hancock, he doesn't have a problem telling Joe Rogan that the Olmec have Negro features, but he doesn't, credit Africa. He's talking Polynesians. I mean, I'm thinking a British science journalist would never say anything about black folk coming from anywhere but Africa. Thing is, all them islands, every single one was populated by Asians. That's mainstream facts, right? But doesn't that mean Asians were black before they got to those islands? Now, Aniyunwiyah is all about mainstream. Some of us don't believe in slave ships. He does. We'll say Israel was in America. He puts Israel in the Middle East. But at the same time, he's given receipts for black Americans being Asian. Peep this real quick.
Hurwitz's Clinical Dermatology 5th edition is an authoritative diagnostic manual in the US. It says, quote, Mongolian spots are flat, deep brown to slate gray or blue-black, often poorly circumscribed, large macular lesions. They are seen in, get this, 75% to 90% of individuals of African descent and Native American babies. So you see Mongolian spots show the most in Africans and Native Americans. But let's see what happens when you single out Black Americans from Africans, because that's what the 4th edition of this manual did. The first sentence in the previous edition originally began by saying, quote, they are seen in more than 90%, not 75 to 90%, just 90% of African American and Native American babies, end quote. Wait, they didn't originally give a range in the 4th edition, but in the 5th edition they do. They didn't give a range in the 4th edition because it was just 90% across the board for both ethnic groups. By removing African blacks, the prevalence of Mongolian spots has a way higher average. Not only that, why do so-called African Americans and Native Americans have the same affinity, the exact same affinity for Mongolian spots? More than 90%. I know a lot of black people don't want to hear the answer to this, but if we can be honest with ourselves, it's because we're a lot more Asian than we want to admit. It's called a Mongolian spot for a reason. Thousands of years ago, I've mentioned in previous presentations that we had an overarching society that connected North American populations with East Asian Proto-Mongolic populations. That society is highly likely to be what's referred to in the Bible as Arphaxad. I keep bringing this up. It says Mongolian spots were found in 75% of Nigerian neonates. 75%. So when the 5th edition said 75% to 90% of Africans, that was based on two groups: African Americans, who were the 90, and Nigerians, who were the 75. And I'll tell you why. It's because these researchers are in the US, and Nigeria has contributed the largest number of African migrants to the US population. So it's easier to just test Nigerians because they're here. The researchers didn't have to leave the country to get their samples. And ironically, Nigeria is replete with the gene pool of a large ethnic group who just happens to share ancient Asian ancestry with us, the Igbo. David Eltis, one of the biggest data contributors to the Slave Voyages database, co-wrote a paper with David Richardson saying, quote, "On the African coast, both Europeans and Africans traded in people that they looked upon as outsiders." Yeah, Igbo made up anywhere from a third to half of the African slaves brought to the Chesapeake region of North America, and it's because sub-Saharan Africans viewed Igbo as foreign to the region. So that's what makes it ironic that Nigeria contributes more immigrants to the US than any other African country. Like I said, those researchers got all their samples from within the US, which is also why they don't give you a fair picture of what the highest Mongolian spot prevalence should be. For that, we should obviously be looking at Mongolians. Mongolian spots are named for Mongolians, so they should have the highest prevalence of Mongolian spots, right? And we just saw that Asians collectively range between 62 to 86%, which is less than Black Americans or Native Americans. But when you single out the Mongolians, the 2007 publication of Dermatologic Clinics says Mongolian spots are, quote, present in over 90% of infants of the Mongolic race and have been found in about 1% of white European infants, the incidence being highest in the Mediterranean region, end quote. Yeah, Mongolians themselves are within the 90th percentile, so Native Americans and Black Americans rank just as highly as actual Mongolians for Mongolian spots. The 1% of Europeans born with this are in the Mediterranean region, as in close to where Israel allegedly was. Just consider the possibility that Israel's genuinely in the Middle East, because I've repeatedly shown you how Israelites most likely came out of Asia and into America.
See, that's what's crazy to me, because basically, I mean, he's saying there's proof in our biology that we're just as Mongolian as the real Mongolians, and Native Americans have the same thing. But remember, Aniyunwiyah shows a lot of evidence that Native Americans are just mixed black and white, meaning they don't look the way they do because of being Siberian. They look like that because Indians mix with Europeans over and over. Same thing with Latinos. They look Asian sometimes too. So Mongolians look like that for the same reason. Black Asians mix with Caucasian Siberians, or something like that, but this makes a lot of sense to me. Okay, compare that to these next few clips right here. Hang on.
I was really starting to uncover some things about America. That's because I don't know that much about America. I've been kind of educated about the others, but America, I hadn't. It puts more of the puzzle together because it's for me. It put more of the puzzle together when I look at the matriarch culture in America, because that's never been discussed. I've been taught that Africa is the motherland. That's where the first mother come from. But when we look at the Americas, it totally shifts the paradigm. It totally shifts the paradigm. But we're gonna discuss more about this as we move on. This is gonna make sense. I don't mean to jump ahead, but I looked at the plume feathered serpent, and then I looked at the nagas. The feathers are very important because you see the feathers, they seem to follow. The feathers seem to be follow, and they seem to be just as old as the snake symbolism. And you see that in the Bible too, when the Bible talks about being protected up under the feathers, under the wings. You see that in Psalms 27. Go back and read that. I thought that the ancestors were just dealing with me like that, because we know that the Bible is from those ancient mothers who prophesied about the future, and the patriarchs wrote their story around the stories in the Bible, because you see them marrying these matriarch women, these spiritual women. They were very magical, very in the height of metaphysical knowledge, and these men were marrying them. Go back and look at that video, Mama Wata, and this will make more sense to you. If you haven't read those books, go back and look at those book reviews. But I started looking at that, and I was like, wow, look at that, the feathered serpent. Then I had to go back and look at the serpent mound, because the serpent mound is a great representation and an indication that those mothers were here. And you're seeing this serpent in every culture. I'm going to go into that too. Because this serpent seems to be in a part of every culture. You can see that serpent in Asia as well. We're seeing that serpent in Asia as well. So that's an indication of the matriarch culture being present there.
So the word Khan, great Khan, Ka for great or supreme. This was Rubruk's story. In about 1098, there lived in Central Asia a certain Khan. Again, we're talking Khan, right? Are we talking about King David? Let's keep going. So Khan was the chief of the Black Katayans. Are we talking tribes chief, right? Are we talking Khan's Khan? The Black Katayans. So, black could have multiple meanings, right? But we're just going to take it for what it says, right? The Black Katayans, because we're just talking King David, right? Talking Khan, right? It would only make sense. When Khan died, the Black Katayans came under the rule of Mongols under Genghis Khan, who overthrew the Kara-Katai Empire. So we're talking Kara-Katai, we're talking about Black Katayans, right? Which means we're talking about Khan, the chief or the supreme ruler of the Katayans, the Katans, right? The Kara-Katai Empire. So Genghis Khan, so the Mongol conquest of Western Shia. That's, for those on the last video, we kind of got an idea, but so the Shia, who are the Western Shia, are the Tangus. So you hear Shi or Shia, you gotta be reminded of the Tangus, because the Shia are the Tangus. So the Tangu, who are the Shia, right? The Tangu or the Dang Xiang, right? The Tangus were the predominant local power in what is now eastern Gansu, Ningxia, and northern Shanxi, according to William of Rubruk, who traveled to various parts of the Mongol Empire in the 13th century, right? We're talking medieval romances, right? The Tangus were valiant and had big swarthy men among them. Swarthy, so means of a dark color, complexion, or caste, right? So we're talking Tangu, right? We're talking Shia, right? Or we talking Black Katayans, man? Right? So again, we're talking Tangu, we're talking Shia, we're talking Kara-Katai, we're talking about dragons. Or maybe this is just all medieval romance. But again, a fiery shooting meteor, we're talking definition of a dragon, shooting meteor, or a fierce, violent person, male or female, as this man or woman is a dragon. So again, we're just talking dragons, right? We're talking heavenly or mythical being. We're talking celestial. We're talking fierce, violent person, male or female. We're talking emperors, right? In China and Japan, the word dragon was used instead of emperor. The dragon's face meant the face of the emperor. The dragon's pace, his majestic walk. But we learned we're not just talking emperors, we're talking empresses, we're talking dracons, dragons. Alright? So Middle America, archaeological map of Middle America. Again, we're talking, right, Southwest Ohio, Adams County, terrestrial image of the constellation Draco, land of the feathered serpent, right? We're talking celestial dragons, right? We're talking Unehiya. We're talking about mystery serpent mounds, right? We're just following the drinking gourd, right? Draco. We're talking the seed of Abraham, right? Let's go. So, the feathered serpent was a prominent supernatural entity or deity found in many Mesoamerican religions. It is still called Quetzalcoatl among the Aztecs, Kukulkan among the Yucatec Maya, and Kukulmat and Tohil among the Kiishma. Tohil like Toril, like Juan Khan, like Prester John, or Kukulkan. Are we talking about the mysterious Maya who disappeared? No one knows. There's no trace of them. Or maybe they're just hidden in plain sight. No, we're just talking dragons. Children of the plum serpent in ancient Mexico. We're just talking Katai though, right? Kar Katai. Come on, man. Unehiya literally meaning under heaven. Unehiya, which we know is Katai. We're talking Americas, right? Under heaven, all that's under heaven. We're talking Israelite. We're talking Indian. Are we talking seed of Abraham? Or are we just talking the celestial empire in China? The Chinese. Come on, man. Nothing against the Chinese, but come on, man. We're talking all under heaven, man. We're talking Genghis Khan. We're talking Prester John. We're talking King David, the celestial empire, the heavenly dynasty. I mean, do the math. I mean, what other heavenly dynasty are we talking about if we're not talking about Israel?
Shout out to my sister Kim Ancestry. She points out the link between Quetzalcoatl and the Nagas of Hinduism, and then dragon canoe ropes in the East Asian dragons, which were flying serpents just like Quetzalcoatl. But sis was linking them to a Set, which was a Kemetic goddess depicted with feathered wings, right? If you put the Chinese dragon with the feathered gods of Egypt like a Set and Heru, you get a feathered serpent. And maybe the feathered serpent came first? I dunno. Wise dragons who civilized groups of people. Maybe they were rulers who came near the time of a meteor sighting. I mean, if the Mongols were black too, think about it. Why do we say Native Americans are Mongolians? 'Cause we might be even more Mongolian than the Native Americans since they mix with colonizers. Anyway, let me bring it back to UB now, 'cause we've only scratched the surface when it comes to mirror world theory. And let me know in the comments how many of y'all rock with some version of Mirror World. I got a little clip I want to show you. It's Aniyunwiyah's commentary on some things you be told Mike TV.
First off, let me just say that Shaman Aniyunwiyah and I disagree on a lot of things when it comes to mirror world theory. In the future, she and I plan to present a new hypothesis about this that we've not heard anyone else discuss. For now, I'm trying to establish a meeting of the minds with other great researchers on the subject. Uriah Brandon is one such intellectual, and I watch a lot of his content. I just want an opportunity to unpack some of these claims.
America is the setting for the biblical events, the events, quote unquote, of mythology in the Bible. And if you were to actually read the book, if you were to actually to pay attention to the verses, there's no other place on earth it could be. We just have the geographic layout that no other continent has, by the way, that is actually being written about in the book. So there are certain descriptions of certain features of land, of certain, I would say predominant features of land, that could be nowhere else on earth. Obviously, one of those would be the Mississippi River, okay, which is the Euphrates, not the Nile, okay? The Nile is a Greek word that came along later as an adjective for tributary creek or stream, or another word for tributary creek or stream, excuse me, a synonym, so to speak. But, you know, these places weren't named by mistake. The Mississippi is not named by mistake. The indigenous meaning of Mississippi is the Great River. The Mississippi means Great River. The Euphrates means Great River.
And I believe the Mississippi and the whole Mississippi Delta region and river tributary system, I believe that's so much larger than the Nile River, right?
Oh yeah, it's not even close. And the historical footprint of the Mississippi.
They just play this weird little trick where there's literally parts of the Mississippi and they'll just rename them as if it's a separate river when it's literally all connected to the Mississippi River.
Right, exactly. So, and that's another thing. The Nile doesn't have any natural tributaries other than the White and Blue Nile, which is another section of the same river. Whereas the Mississippi has the 7 tributaries that are described in Isaiah 11:15. The Nile doesn't have it, but it also is pertaining to the Euphrates, which is called the Great River. And the Nile isn't like I said, the Nile is a new school term.
So UB says America has to be where the biblical events took place because only the Americas have the geography described in the Tanakh. The first example he gives is the Mississippi River, which he says is referred to in the Bible as the Euphrates. His rationale is that both names mean Great River. Plus, the Mississippi has the 7 streams that the Euphrates is described as having in Isaiah. All of this comes from pretty in-depth analysis of scripture, obviously, so I respect the research because the Euphrates doesn't have 7 tributaries. The Mississippi has about 250 tributaries, but it's often described as having 7 big ones coming from 7 river basins. However, I also want to check scripture for myself, which is Isaiah 11:15. Quote, "And Hisagetemesi shall utterly destroy the tongue of the Egyptian sea." And I say Hisagetemesi because that's what my ancestors called her most recently. The Great Spirit's name in the Ichiti Indian language means ruler of wind or master of breath because wind is the element in which she manifests most often out of all terrestrial elements. When she led us out of Egypt, she did so in the form of intermittent tornadoes, and your breath is a constant cycle of sacred wind. Wind that's been set apart to sustain you. And this first clause is about her destroying the tongue of the Egyptian sea. Hypothetically, if Egypt was where they say it is, there's no sea that the African Egypt touches other than the Mediterranean. And the Asian Euphrates doesn't touch the Mediterranean Sea at all. If Egypt was in Africa, as they say, that tongue would then have to be the Nile Delta, the mouth of the Mediterranean into what we now call the Nile. So, quote, Hisagetemesi shall utterly destroy the tongue of the Egyptian sea, and with his mighty wind shall he shake his hand over the river, and shall smite it in the 7 streams, and make men go over dry shod, end quote. So we know it's the master of breath because the mighty wind shall do this. It's not just mighty though. Mighty is usually Gibor in ancient Hebrew, but this term is ayam, most likely an Arabic loan word having to do with thirst due to internal heat, which you can find mentioned in the Brown Driver Briggs lexicon for this word. The authors being poetic by grabbing an Aramaic or Arabic word that closely resembles the Hebrew word for sea, which is yam. It's verbal irony. Yam means sea, and the Great Spirit will destroy the tongue of the yam with an ayam. which means the opposite of sea. Instead of a sea, which is an abundance of water, it's a thirst for water due to heat. A hot wind will somehow cause this. So the translation should say, with his evaporating wind shall he shake his hand over the river, and shall smite it in the 7 streams. End quote. Hisagenemesi will muster the wind over the river, but when she strikes the river, she specifically targets the 7 streams to dry them up. The Nile Delta in the first millennium was said to have 7 streams, and the Greeks named each one. Encyclopedia Britannica tells us, quote, north of Cairo, the Nile enters the Delta region, a level triangular lowland. In the 1st century CE, the Greek geographer Strabo recorded the Nile as fanning out into 7 delta distributaries. The flow has since been controlled and redirected so that the river now flows across the delta to the sea through 2 main distributaries, the Rosetta and the Damietta, which is Dumyat branches. End quote. FYI, Penn State has an online geography course about the Nile Delta as a prototype for studying all deltas, and its 4th lesson elucidates how the destruction of 2 Hellenized cities in Egypt, Heraklion and Canopus, both of which can be found on the video game Assassin's Creed Origins, suggests the destruction of these 2 cities, according to this lesson, suggests unusually large Nile floods that we could attribute to wind. And they say it led to some of those delta streams drying up prematurely due to siltation. Quote, written records also indicate anomalously high Nile floods in 741 to 742 AD. Anomalously high Nile floods, higher than normal. The rushing floodwaters could also have overwhelmed the distributary and caused the sediments to become water-laden. In addition, floods often cause rivers to relocate to new courses, and the Canopus distributary may have abandoned its banks following the flooding. It may well be that both disasters took place and that the resulting decade of physical instability led to the ultimate and final demise of the 2 cities. The truth is that these 2 cities would have eventually disappeared even without one or more natural disasters. The Nile Delta, any delta, subsides over time as water is pushed out from between individual sediment grains during compaction. End quote. So silt gets redistributed and compacted in the delta and the banks, which makes it easier for wind to push floodwaters well beyond their boundaries where the water's not recoverable. Over time, the delta dries. It happens naturally. And that's what the Great Spirit is. Nature. Everything she does, she always does it naturally. Our ancestors anthropomorphized nature when describing the things she did, but nature will only ever do what's natural to do anyway. There are always several ways ecosystems can shift, but the probability gets weighted toward a specific version of that outcome, which is what we call the will of the Great Spirit. Her will is weighted probability, also known as God with an A. I covered this in the 2nd episode of the Energy Mysteries series. Check my channel for a video entitled Colored Shaman of Ancient American Indians Decoded Evolution and Big Bang. I bring all this up because UB's take is that Isaiah 11:15 is about the Euphrates. And since the Euphrates in Asia doesn't have 7 streams, he says we have to be talking about the Mississippi, which can be said to have 7 major tributaries. But what I'm giving you is a very good reason to think that the river in Isaiah 11:15 is actually the Nile, regardless of what it would have been called at that time. The origin of the word Nile would be irrelevant since the scripture obviously never said Nile. Plus, let's not forget that the Hebrews speak of 2 great rivers. In Daniel 10:4, the writer says, "And in the 24th day of the 1st month, as I was by the side of the great river, which is Hiddekel, End quote. Pause there, because I'm reading this in the King James. Switch to New King James. That same sentence says, as I was by the side of the great river, that is the Tigris. Yeah, the reason it says that is because the old Persian name for Hidekel is Tigra, and Greeks eventually put an S at the end. So the Tigris, or Tigris, Tigra, Hidekel, is supposed to be comparable to the Euphrates. The Tigris is supposed to be comparable to the Euphrates, which means that if the Mississippi is the Euphrates, it should have a twin river almost as great as itself. The only candidate we have for that in America would be the Missouri. But Genesis 2:14 mentions Hidekel and says, quote, that is it which goeth toward the east of Assyria. Relative to the positioning of the Euphrates, the Tigris arcs out due east toward the eastern part of the early Assyrian territory. So that would fit the description here. Relative to the Mississippi, though, the Missouri River stretches due northwest from the Mississippi River. So that wouldn't fit as well.
And also we have the Western Sea on the border of what we would call Lebanon, which the cedars of Lebanon are the tallest and most magnificent trees written about in scripture. They can't be anywhere else on earth. They would have to be in the West. It would either have to be the great sequoia or the great redwood. This is, if you believe that another tree is considered the cedar of Lebanon on earth, and also if you believe that the cedars of Lebanon that they claim are the cedars of Lebanon are any greater than the redwood forest, you are smoking all kinds of crack, and it doesn't matter. At this point, you could just be objective.
So the cedars of Lebanon are a tricky subject. He's saying either the great redwood or the great sequoia must be the trees referred to as the cedars of Lebanon in scripture, because they're genuinely much more gargantuan than the modern day cedars of Lebanon. And true enough, these trees here in America are the largest in the world, absolutely Brobdingnagian in stature. Nevertheless, the cedars of Lebanon should not be impressive during the diasporic affliction of the Yatzaralim today. That's the problem. Ezekiel told Pharaoh on behalf of Adonai Yahweh, the masters of existence, that the Great Spirit would cause the cedars of Lebanon to fade to faint, not fade, but faint, as a way for the land to mourn the fall of the Assyrian Empire at the hands of the heathen. Remember, I've been showing you that Yahweh is existence or nature, Gichimanito, Wachantanka, the Great Spirit, and she's made up of Elohim, which are the elements, Manitug, energy mysteries, literally the elements on your periodic table, as well as the forces that bind and separate them. They are the spirits that make up the Great Spirit. Nature mourned the loss of Ashur because they too were her children, not just Yatzarel. Ezekiel 31 verse 3, quote, behold, the Assyrian was a cedar in Lebanon with fair branches and with a shadowing shroud and of an high stature, and his top was among the thick boughs. Notice it's talking about Assyria. It's not talking about Lebanon. It's saying Assyria was a cedar of Lebanon. So Ezekiel designates the cedars of Lebanon as a totem of the Assyrian Empire. Ezekiel 31, we're still in that same chapter. Skip to verses 10 and 11. Quote, therefore thus saith the masters of existence, because thou hast lifted up thyself in height, and he hath shot up his top among the thick boughs, and his heart is lifted up in his height, I have therefore delivered him into the hand of the mighty one of the heathen. He shall surely deal with him. I have driven him out for his wickedness. End quote. So the Assyrians got so great that their rulers began to see themselves as being above the law, began to see the Assyrian Empire as being above the law of nature. So nature dismantled the empire by having them be conquered by the heathen, which in this case is Babylon. And then if we skip to verse 15, thus saith Adonai Yahweh. This is verse 15, quote, thus saith Adonai Yahweh, in the day when he went down to the grave, I caused a mourning. When who went down to the grave? When Ashur went down to the grave. That's who we're talking about, the Assyrian Empire. In the day when Ashur went down to the grave, I caused a mourning. I covered the deep for him, and I restrained the floods thereof, and the great waters were stayed. That's drought. And I caused Lebanon to mourn for him, and all the trees of the field fainted for him. End quote. Lebanon's land began to suffer around this time, and the cedars gradually began to grow less and less from that point forward, which is why Isaiah describes the awakening the way he does. Remember how Isaiah described the awakening. I've done videos on this. Isaiah 29. We're going over there now. Isaiah 29 verses 10 and 11. For Hisagere Messi hath poured out upon you the wind of deep sleep, and have closed your eyes. The prophets and your rulers, the seers hath he covered. Hisagere Messi has done this, right? Hisagere Messi, the master of breath, the Lord of wind, hath poured out upon you the wind of deep sleep. The Ruach, which is spirit, breath, wind, all one word for all three of those things, wind of deep sleep, and have closed your eyes. The prophets and your rulers, the seers, hath he covered, and the vision of all is become unto you as the words of a book that is sealed, which men deliver to one that is learned, saying, read this, I pray thee. And he saith, I cannot, for it is sealed. End quote. That's when the sleep began. We began to have fewer and fewer prophets, and no one could understand the prophecies of the Tanakh anymore. We got fewer prophetic visions and dreams from then on, so we wouldn't be able to see our way out of the curses of Deuteronomy 28, which is multiple diasporas, multiple lost wars, multiple plagues, and multiple slave trades, with specifically chattel slavery and trafficking on ships each time. But then come verses 17 and 18, right? 17 and 18, quote, is it not yet a very little while, and Lebanon shall be turned into a fruitful field, and the fruitful field shall be esteemed as a forest. And in the day that the deaf, and in that day shall the deaf hear the words of the book, and the eyes of the blind shall see out of obscurity and out of darkness. End quote. Okay, so one day Isaiah prophesied that Lebanon would be fruitful again. It would be turned into a fruitful field. I covered this in a video early last year. That verb shall be turned is washab, a hifil conjugation of the verb shub, which actually means will be caused to return. So washab Lebanon la Carmel means Lebanon will be forced to turn back into a fruitful field. And that fruitful field will be esteemed as or viewed as a forest. In the day that this happens, that's when our awakening will be. The deaf will hear the words of the book again. We'll understand scripture for what it's truly saying again, and we'll be able to see the future again and prophesy. So today, the cedars of Lebanon should be newly returning. They shouldn't be what they were in our ancestors' day. Guess what? That's exactly what's happening. Last year, I showed you that U.S. aid and the U.S. Forest Service started Lebanon's reforestation initiative in 2010. By 2017, more than 500,000 cedars had been planted. Human beings view it as a man-made forest, but by comparison to the original Lebanon, it's just a fruitful field. Nevertheless, From 2010 to the present day, hundreds of thousands of our people have suddenly discovered that we're the anointed children of nature, the principal people, the chosen of natural selection, the Yatsaralim, known by the trees of Turtle Island as the stewards of the land for the last couple millennia. I say all this to say the cedars of Lebanon in the Middle East look exactly like what they should look like in 2026.
See, Egypt itself is a theme park. Okay, there's no evidence that the pyramids were there before the 1700s. And furthermore, if Egypt was a Roman city and had been occupied since at least the 1st century AD, how could no one ever transcribe anything on the pyramids or the hieroglyphics? How could anyone translate the hieroglyphics how come no one could translate the hieroglyphics until Napoleon came with the French? And this is after the French had already ransacked the middle part of North America. So no one knew anything about the Egyptian language prior to 1800. Just like the idea that Memphis, Tennessee is named after the city of Memphis in Egypt. First of all, Memphis was named before the history was even transcribed. They couldn't even read hieroglyphics yet. So the idea that someone could then, oh yeah, I remember Memphis, Egypt from what? You remember it from what? The hieroglyphics that have yet to be transcribed? So it's all been BS.
So currently, I still support mainstream geography for Egypt and Israel, but hieroglyphs is where UBTV's argument is difficult for me to beat. Let me address the pyramids part first and work my way up to that. He mentioned that there's no evidence of pyramids being in Egypt before the 1700s. What he means is no one ever mentioned them in any historical literature until then. In order for that to be true, lots of literature would need to be viewed as recent fabrications, such as the corpus of Pliny the Elder from the 1st century. Book 36 of The Natural History of Pliny is called The Natural History of Stones. And in it, Pliny just asks a bunch of questions about who was first to cut marble and use it in buildings, and he asks the same of a few other types of stone, also talking about obelisks. I'm not sure why him randomly wondering these things was ever considered excellent literature, honestly, but white people are proud of their ancestors, which is perfectly understandable, and I gather that from getting my degree in this. Anyways, lines 16 and 17 mention in passing, quote, "The marvelous works in Egypt, the pyramids, the Egyptian Sphinx," end quote. Side note, what's hilarious is that even this is older than the Gospels of Matthew or John. I just had to say that. It was written around 77 CE. Anyways, there are loads of other examples between then and now, but let's put all of them aside and take Brother Uriah's words at face value. Maybe all the literature of classical antiquity was written recently and backdated somehow. He didn't say that, but maybe that's what he means. Maybe that's what he believes. What difference would it make?
Right, and there's no mention of pyramids in the Bible, right? There's no mention of pyramids in the Old Testament. And that's kind of like beside the fact.
So UB, of course, knows scripture quite well, so he knows there's no mention of pyramids anywhere in the whole thing. So my question is, what difference would it make if pyramids hadn't been written about until the 18th or 19th centuries? How would that affect our understanding of where the biblical Egypt is? If the biblical Egypt wasn't described as having or lacking pyramids, then we can't base anything off pyramids. And if someone wanted to trick us into thinking Egypt was in Africa, they couldn't have used pyramids to trick us because we wouldn't even be associating pyramids with Egypt in the first place. That being said, he makes a brilliant point about these hieroglyphs though. He points out that no one could transcribe them until the 1700s, and mainstream scholarship doesn't deny that. No one disagrees with him on that, and the reason it matters is because the French are the ones who decoded it right after controlling the middle of North America. The timing is uncanny, so I can understand him being suspicious about that. I'm not convinced by this alone, but I can admit that I don't have a good counter argument for that. All I'll say here is, in almost every video on this channel, I have given you the Ijiti Indian principle of discernment, right? 1 is an incident, 2 is a coincidence, 3 is a pattern. This would technically be a coincidence. Regardless, if you think Europeans conspired to flip the map and cover it up, then you would have also you would also have to assume that the works of classical antiquity that mention the pyramids are probably just a fabrication too.
And a lot of these places have been named by Freemasons. That, you know, a lot of people hold the secret. I want to say a lot of people, a few people do. I think a lot of times people just get mad because they learned something and now it's like they felt like what they learned, they have to throw it in the trash now.
There's nothing wrong with conspiracy theories because honestly, the elites of our society have been proven to conspire on a variety of things. They can't be trusted. So to theorize that they conspired to do things we haven't proven yet is warranted. We're going to talk a lot more about mirror world theory in the near future, but it's going to take a lot more videos to dive into all that. Consider this just an introduction. For now, all I ask is that you keep an open mind about Asia.
So that's that. Join Unehiya to support the campaign. I mean, pretty much we're trying to get this bill amended so Black Americans can get recognized as Indians universally. So if you join as a Red Stick stakeholder, you get full access to the copper mining series. But let me know what y'all think about this whole Ta-Meri thing. And talk to me about Asia. You know? Peace.